Hey guys. So today our learning target is to be able to use an input-output table to graph non-linear equations. Okay, so non-linear, non means not. Linear, we're talking about lines. So when we make graphs today, they are not going to be straight lines, they're going to be other shapes. Okay. Well, our sponge today was kind of a mini lesson reviewing some things that you might have forgotten about, like x squared means, x times x. So if I know x is 4, I sub in 4, so 4 squared. And 4 times 4, this is what this really means, is 4 times 4, 2 4s, is 16. Okay. On your calculator, there's a little button that looks like this. And what that button does is take, it doesn't square x, it squares whatever number you put before it. It makes a little 2 as an exponent. Okay, so subbing in for squared. Okay, so this says 3x squared. So 3 times negative 2 squared. Now, the parentheses here serve two very important purposes. Number one, they're showing multiply between the 3 and the negative 2x squared. However, you cannot, this would not mean the same thing if I used a dot instead of parentheses. You could still use the dot, but the negative 2, because it has an exponent, negative numbers, whoops, I forgot to write the negative sign. Okay, negative numbers with exponents need parentheses. Okay, so let's say I had negative 2 squared versus negative 2 in parentheses squared. Here's the difference. An exponent only affects what it directly touches. It is touching the 2. This is saying 2 squared, and then take the negative of it. So this on your calculator would give you negative 4 as an answer. Because exponents, remember that we say negative here, but negative is a branch off of the subtraction sign. It's related to subtraction, and exponents come before subtraction. Okay, so I would be doing 2 squared and then making it negative. That's what that means. So if x represents negative 2, that means I'm squaring the negative and the 2. In order to make that mathematically happen, I need to put it in parentheses. And think about it, parentheses comes before exponents in order of operations. So now, my exponent of 2 touches a parenthesis, and it will square everything in the parenthesis. It'll square the negative, it'll square the 2. Negative 2 times negative 2 is 4. Okay, so my whole point is that negative numbers have to have parentheses around them, both mathematically and in the calculator, in order to get a correct answer. So 3 times negative 2 squared is 12. Okay, down below, we have these funny brackets that you probably haven't seen in a few years. Okay, they're not brackets, they're not parentheses. Those straight lines on each side of the x are called absolute value. And the dictionary definition of that is basically how big is the number? How far away from 0 is it? Okay. Whether you have $5 or you owe $5, you're talking about $5. So what absolute value does is just tells you how big the number is. The absolute value of negative 5 is 5. The size of the number is 5. Whether it's negative or positive, it's 5. Okay. The absolute value of 2 times x, if x is 3, so 2 times 3. 2 times 3 is 6. How big is 6? It's 6. Most kids, what they take away is, gee, if what's inside the absolute value is negative, we switch it to a positive. And if what's inside the absolute value is already positive, we just keep it positive. So absolute value, most kids just take away that it makes everything positive if it's not positive already. All right, so we're talking about nonlinear graphs today. Nonlinear graphs. So a graph is nonlinear if the graph does not form a line. Okay, so we're going to look at the first type on the left-hand side. What does a graph with x squared look like? Okay, the name of an x squared equation is a quadratic. Okay, you guys will spend approximately 25% of algebra next year getting really super up close and personal with quadratics. Lots of details, lots of depth. Today, we're just putting our baby toe in the water of quadratics. Okay, it's basically a y equals, and then there'll be some stuff after the y equals, and somewhere in that stuff you'll see an x squared. There might be a coefficient in front of the x. You might add or subtract something with it, but that's a quadratic if there's an x squared in there somewhere. And basically, a very basic version of the function looks like this. Okay. This is very important for you to realize, when I connect the dots, I am making a U shape. It is not pointy. It is curved, especially down here at the bottom. It's a nice curve. And we would label it with our equation. Okay. Now, the shape of this curve actually has a special name. It is called a parabola. So the equations that make it are quadratic, and the shape that you graph is called a parabola. All right. Then over here, what does an equation with absolute value of x in it look like? Again, it's going to be something y equals a bunch of stuff, but somewhere there'll be absolute value signs with an x in it. There could be a plus or minus number inside. There could be a plus or minus number outside the absolute value. We can complicate that, but the basic form of absolute value of x looks like this. Okay, and so on. And it makes a V shape. Now, we don't have any special vocabulary words for it that I know of. We just call it an absolute value graph. And it makes a V shape. Okay. So, on your homework and in our notes, all right, you guys have seen these input-output tables before, but when we were doing linear equations, we only used the numbers 0, 1, and 2. But notice that these graphs change direction on the negative side. So we need to incorporate some other numbers in there. We're still going to use 0, 1, and 2, but we're also going to use -1 and -2. So -2, -1, 0, 1, and 2. X squared. Whoops. Okay. Now, the first one I'm subbing in, -2. Negatives need parentheses when they have an exponent. Now, positives don't need parentheses, but it's not wrong if you want to maintain the habit of putting parentheses. It's not wrong if you put them. So -2 squared would be +4. Negative 1 squared would be 1, 0, 1, and 4. And you can just type those into your calculator. And then you're going to graph it. Negative 2 and 4, negative 1 and 1, 0, 0, 1, 1, 2, 4. Now what you'll notice is we get kind of that same curve shape. Just like that. And we're going to label it y equals x squared. Now for the purposes of our video, I'm not going to do all 4 examples. Okay, I'm going to do this one and I'm going to do one more. Okay, let's do the most complex one that you would actually see on a homework. So 3x squared minus 5. Again, negative 2, negative 1, 0, 1, and 2. 3, 3, 3, 3, 3. Okay? So now we're just subbing in. Now, these are more complex. They have more going on in each row. We really have to think about our order of operations, which would tell us to do exponents first. So negative 2 times negative 2 is positive 4. Then multiply by 3 is 12. Then subtract 5 is 7. But don't forget, most calculators, especially that I know for sure our calculator we use in class, if that's the one you're using at home, that one is programmed to do order of operations for you. So if you type it in exactly as you see it, 3 parenthesis, negative 1 parenthesis squared minus 5, you will get the correct answer of negative 2. Negative 5, negative 2, and 7. One thing I didn't point out on the other one, but I'll point it out here. The first number and the last number, at 8th grade level, we make them come out the same for parabolas. And that's just to kind of give you some comfort in knowing that and confidence that your answer is right. And some students actually start at the bottom row where everything is positive and work their way up the chart, because then when you get into the negative answers up here, you already have this group right here to model off of, okay? So if this is the middle number, negative 5, and this one was negative 2, you know that one's probably going to be negative 2. And that one's 7, so that one's probably 7. I will tell you that's not going to happen next year because there'll be an added level of difficulty when we do this for algebra, but you know, that'll at least help you for this year. Okay, so graphing this. Negative 2 elevator up to the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7th floor. The negative 1 elevator down to the negative 2 floor. The 0 elevator down to the negative 5th floor. The 1 elevator down to the negative 2 floor. And the 2 elevator up to the 7th floor. We also make the graph so that, you know, you have 2 dots across from each other, and then the very bottom dot, the vertex dot, is in the middle. Now again, when you connect these, do not connect pointy. Connect as a curve. Parabolas are curves. Okay, and label y equals 3x squared minus 5. Okay, so those are our quadratics. Quadratic is the name of the equation. This is the quadratic. The graph, the picture it makes is called a parabola. Okay, absolute value. Absolute value of x. Here again, we're going to use 0, 1, and 2, but we're also going to use negative 1 and negative 2 because in the negative side of the graph, or at some point in the graph, sometimes it's not going to be perfectly in the middle, the graph changes direction. So we need more than 3 points to make sure we see the change in direction. So absolute value of negative 2, absolute value of negative 1, absolute value of 0, absolute value of 1, absolute value of 2. So the absolute value of negative, remember what absolute value is asking is how big is the number? We don't care if it's positive or negative. Well, it's 2. 1, 0, 1, 2. Okay, just take the numbers, ignore the signs. So negative 2 and 2, negative 1 and 1, 0, 0, 1, 1, 2, 2. And draw past your dots, follow their pattern. Don't forget to label. Okay, here again, I'm not going to do every graph in the notes. Okay, let's say I did this one here, 2 times the absolute value of x. Okay. Negative 2 absolute value is positive 2 times 2 is 4. Negative 1, the absolute value would be positive 1 times 2 is 2. 0, 2, and 4. So negative 2, 4. Negative 1, 2. 0, 0. 1, 2, 2, 4. So this makes like a skinnier V. The calculator does not do absolute value at this level. When you have algebra next year, the calculator we use next year will do absolute value for you. However, absolute value is pretty darn easy, guys. It basically says, hey, ignore the negative sign. So if I'm ignoring the negative sign here, 2 times 2 is 4. 2 times 1 is 2. 2 times 0 is 0. 2 times 1 is 2. 2 times 2 is 4. So it's not really calculator worthy. Okay? Just ignore the negative signs. Okay? Thank you. Have a good day, and I'll see you next time.